Let's review now in detail the code that was created. We'll start with our controller. So now that we've been through the basic C# course, we can pretty much follow every line of code here, but still, let's follow it. We have a set of using statements that at this point of time are not yet used. We may use them a bit later. We have the definition of the namespace, and we have the definition of our class, public class show order, which inherits from UI controller base. By inheriting from UI controller base, this specific show orders gets all the capabilities of a controller that controls the UI. Just like before in the basic trainings that we've done, the dog, which inherited from the animal class, got all the capabilities of the animal class and extended it with the specific things that the dog does. We have our constructor. We have our run method that actually executes the UI controller. So when we call run, it will execute the UI controller. And we have our override onload. So what's the syntax? Override onload. What does it mean? It actually overrides the basic implementation of onload. What we say here, just like any animal can make a sound, but a dog will do have, the same thing goes to show order. Every UI controller will unload, but this specific UI controller, the show orders UI controller, will set the view when it's loaded to this specific view. Okay? So now that we understand every line of code here in our controller, let's go over to our view. Right-click, View Code. In our view, again, we have a lot of using statements. We have the namespace. Notice this namespace has views at the end to indicate the views folder in which it exists. We have our class, which inherits from the form class. This is how it gets the visual designing capabilities of Visual Studio. So it can do anything that a form can do, and then it adds its specific implementation to it in this code. We've received the controller parameter and saved it. We'll talk more about sending and receiving parameters later in the code. And then it calls the initialize component code. Well, we cannot see this code over here. This code resides within the designer class. And this is because we don't really need to touch this code. This is the code that gets generated automatically by Visual Studio when you edit the screen. Okay, and this is also why we have the partial class definition here and in our code behind. So now that we understand every line of code in our code, we can proceed to the next step.